I'd like you to imagine for a second waking up and hearing that the Prime Minister of Canada was trying to eliminate your job. Um, this type of behavior from politicians has never gone particularly well. I remember it's probably about 10 years ago now, there was a politician running in Ontario that talked about, cutting 100,000 jobs, and everybody got up in arms, and rightly so. Um, Justin Trudeau has done something very similar lately. He's committed to basically firing tens of thousands of people, and you should wonder if you're affected. Now, when I say he's planning on firing these workers, some people watching this video, they might go, "Oh well, that's okay." It's not. So Justin Trudeau has announced something. He's trying to make it sound really nice and really good, called a just transition, which means that he wants to see energy sector workers in Canada see our jobs essentially be displaced to places like Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, because we still need, at this moment in time, carbon energy. That carbon energy is coming into Canada from these places. At the same time, he's wanting to fire workers in the energy sector. So the way that the Liberals approach this is, rather than talking about ways to, provide Canadians with a better investment environment to create new jobs by, like, let's say, lowering taxes and being more competitive with less burdensome regulations, he's pushing forward with this thing called just transition, which, as far as I can determine, essentially means putting more and more restrictions on the energy sector so that there's less and less jobs. And it's not just people who work directly in the energy sector. Many of you who will watch this, that, like, steel workers who provide products for things like pipelines, they're affected. People across the country are affected. The energy sector is one of the biggest parts of the Canadian economy, right? But he wants to just transition it away. This is a huge problem. Now, he's tried this before. And there was a report that was issued, which kind of shocks me, because sometimes Justin Trudeau's policies, they get glossed over by a lot of areas. But there's a report that came out this week, and it's actually even written about in the newspaper. The headline reads, "The Hapless Hypocrisy of the Liberals' Just Transition for Energy Workers." And the author is not, of this article, is not a hardcore, what I would say, partisan conservative or anything like that. The report, what it does is it essentially says that when Justin Trudeau tried this policy, this just transition policy, with workers in the coal sector, this is the summary of the report. Rather than ramp up a coherent plan for coal workers, bureaucrats and politicians did little more than tinker with employment insurance. I don't actually think that this is a partisan issue. I've talked to colleagues in other political parties who have talked about how when the government goes to try and tinker with an industry so that there's less of it for some sort of grander policy, there's all sorts of negative societal impacts. I talk about colleagues who watched the cod fishery in Atlantic Canada be utterly gutted by Liberal policy. I look at colleagues in Ontario, in mining communities, who have had politicians just transition these jobs elsewhere. And usually what it means, to quote my colleague, I'm not going to out him, but he says it's what it means is, rather than somebody getting another job, it means a U-Haul sort of coming because somebody has lost their house and they need to move somewhere else. So instead of talking, like, using fancy code words like just transition to try and gloss over or make nice firing of tens of thousands of people across the country from their jobs, and then basically having these government reports saying their policies doesn't work, the government, what Justin Trudeau needs to do is he needs to be honest with you, right? Everybody watching this cares about the environment. I know that every Canadian cares about the environment. But to say that, like, somehow we don't need carbon energy right now is just a fallacy. I don't know about you. I'm sitting in north central Calgary today. There's virtually no public transit in my part of the city. I've been trying to get a light rail transit line up here for 10 years. We still don't have it, which means that lots of people in my community need to what? Drive. They need to drive. Okay? And what do they need to do to drive? They need to fill up their car. And what happens when you're filling up your car right now? It's costing you a lot of money, right? What we should be doing is trying to ensure that Canadian energy, which is produced under some of the highest environmental standards in the world, is displacing oil from places like Saudi and Venezuela, while at the same time looking at readily available, low cost, low carbon alternatives. And yeah, that's going to take some time. But you know what's not going to work? Just firing energy sector workers or firing coal workers or saying like, you know what, your jobs, they don't matter, go away. I don't understand why the liberals feel like they can just not work with a whole section of the Canadian population whose livelihoods, A, depend on this industry, and B, the entire Canadian population who, like it or not, depends on carbon energy right now, right? I mean, carbon energy is what gets our groceries to places. Carbon energy in most places is what heats our homes. So instead of saying like, okay, how do we make it affordable over a long period of time for Canadians to engage in lower carbon products and practices, what the Liberals are doing is they're saying, no, we're just going to fire tens of thousands of workers through a just transition program that its own reports say don't work. It just puts people out of a job. I don't buy into this thing that we need to have complete social unrest to address challenges in the environment. I don't understand why we can't work together to come up with solutions without saying that we're going to fire tens of thousands of people. And you know what? Let's say that Justin Trudeau did want to transition people to other jobs. Where are those jobs being created in Canada? We've got super high taxes, super crazy regulations, you know, super massive government debt, high inflation. Like, anybody looking to invest in Canada right now is going, there's a lot of political instability. There's not a lot of economic reasons here to invest. So if the government, like if Trudeau's actually serious about creating jobs in other parts of the country, the government can't do that. The government can't wave a magic wand and like sprinkle some money around and then all of a sudden have all these other jobs. That never works. It's wrong thinking. What we need to do is create the conditions for job creators to invest and create new jobs. And also, like, let's even talk about clean technology, right? There are people in Canada, experts like that have developed things like major advances in carbon capture and sequestration technology. They've developed all sorts of new technology and thoughts around alternative sources of energy, but yet the government is not creating the conditions for those technologies to be adopted in our own country. It's crazy. So when you hear this term, just transition, what it is code for is Justin Trudeau firing people across this country. And if you're arguing with somebody, or if you're somebody who's watching this out of good faith saying like, you know, Michelle, no, he wants to find someone else a job through this program. There's a report that was issued this week that says this doesn't work. This doesn't work. So rather than Justin Trudeau just trying to flat out fire people, raising the cost of energy for all of you, what we need to do is work together to find actual solutions without trying to put people out of work. I'm so tired of this, and I'm tired of the polarized politics in our country that makes it virtually impossible to get this thing done. What we need to do is work together to come up with solutions that both protect the environment and protect jobs and also make life affordable in Canada. Those three things all have to be in place for our country to be prosperous and peaceful, right? Anyway, that's what I'm working on for you today. Please share this video and, you know, talk to somebody who might think that it's okay to just fire people in one sector of the economy. It's not. And if it happens to one sector, it means it's okay for your sector too. Mark my words, that's what Justin Trudeau wants, right? Anyway, share this video. Have a great weekend. I'm getting back to work, working hard for you in Calgary. Have a great day.